Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say we just found out yesterday that the gentleman who's in charge of the unemployment modernization program got hacked. Just saying, they're getting everybody. Um, so if you want to go to the first slide, Amy, basically employers, you know, unemployment fraud is a serious issue all over the place. It is a national problem. And hold on, hold on. National problem, and what's going on with that is that you know the scammers are taking opportunities. They're not hitting everybody at once. What they're doing is they're going after vulnerable states, and then when they hit a vulnerable state, and that state puts some sort of safeguards in place, then they move on to another state. Unfortunately, and people are saying, well, how does this happen? And employees are screaming at their employers saying, how did my information get out there? What did you guys do wrong? And you guys need to say, we absolutely did nothing wrong. The problem is there were two large data breaches about 3 to 4 years ago that shall remain nameless. And in one of them in particular, the data of 126 million Americans was breached, and it was name, social security number, birth date, home address, where they work, and how much they make. Now think about that. What can anybody do with that info? Also, people are just hacking, just going online, not people that bought the information off the dark web. And that's what they're saying, by the way, that this information went down to the dark web, got broken into bite-sized pieces, and then sold off. And basically what happened is those folks were sitting there waiting for the perfect storm to use this data. And COVID was it. You guys all know they were paying money out with both hands, the states, all of them. And not even, they would have paid it till the Hun. I mean, they weren't checking anything. So, in the beginning, it was very easy. So they would do false representation of who they were. And like I said, they would target different systems. Next one.
Judy,
Amy?
Judy, just to jump in. Are there any states in particular that you see as more vulnerable than others?
Pennsylvania. We're going to get there. And you know what? Pennsylvania replaced a 40-year-old system. And in fact, there's a whole bunch of states still running 40-year-old systems. But, how to say it, who would change systems in the middle of a pandemic, number one? I mean, it just doesn't. And you say, well, the pandemic's over. Well, no, not from unemployment, because all these claimants are filing for year 2 now. And Pennsylvania bought an off-the-shelf software, if you can believe that. And I find that mind-boggling because unemployment is like Babylon. You've got 53 jurisdictions that comprise, 50 states, 3 territories. Every piece of paper, and any of you know who have multi-state workforces, every piece of paper, every state is different. And words that'll stop a claim cold dead in PA, where in Maryland or Jersey, no idea you bought shelf. And had 3 meetings with the state of PA, corporate cost control, and PA, an hour apiece, 3 weeks in a row. And every time we point out serious problems, they say, okay, well, we'll talk to our vendor. And that's what we're getting. So we all hang up from the call and go, well, golly gee, we're no further ahead. But, so it's a bad situation and it has to get fixed. Basically with identity fraud on the fraudulent unemployment claims frame there, the biggest one you're going to see is getting paperwork for someone who's working full time. And you'll notice the new claims that you're getting, a lot of them only have the last 4 of the social. If the last four of the social match the name, you can pretty much assure that this claim is being filed from data breach information. That is very, very serious. You could also receive paperwork for an employee who never worked for you. What that is, that's some dumb scammer who's, throwing a bunch of spaghetti on the wall hoping something sticks. You know what I'm saying? However, if they're filing for a PUA claim, they could say they were a 1099 employee or even an independent contractor or self-employed or a gig worker, and the state just might take well, how much did you make? I mean, I had one I could not believe. It said where the person gave their wages, and I can't believe someone looking at that didn't say, oh, this doesn't pass the smell test. They give 4 quarters for their wages in the base year. They gave $500,000 for each quarter. So it was hilarious. At the bottom, it said total wages, $2 million. You are eligible for unemployment. I'm like, really? Nobody looked at this and thought it looked weird? And a lot of the folks in the upper echelons of companies, and I don't know if it's happened to you or not, but it's happening everywhere. Owners of companies, VPs, CEOs, CFOs, you name it, upper level managers that have been at the company for years and years and years, those are the ones that are getting hacked because this is from the data breach. These people make good money. They were essential employees, so it's a safe bet that they didn't get laid off. And it's not going to be a duplicate claim, and it'll go through. They do not want to hack John Doe restaurant worker for 2 reasons. Number one, that person did not make a lot of money, so it would be a piddly claim. And number 2, that person's most likely already have an open claim. So if they were to file in his name, it would get flagged right away as a duplicate claim. And the last thing, and this is why you guys really need to be serious with your folks and helping them on this, is they receive a IRS form 1099-G at the end of the year. So for their taxes for next year. Well, can you imagine if you had no idea that a claim was filed in your name, and come January, when all your important tax documents come through, you get a 1099-G that says you received $17,000 in unemployment benefits and you owe taxes on it. It's going to be a mess. And that is going to be a huge problem come January of 2022. Just telling you right now. What we recommend you do, and this is something in the past I would tell people not to do, because filing for unemployment, workers' comp, and FMLA are entitlements. I could be working for you 40 hours a week, and I could file for unemployment. That's a legitimate filing. Hopefully the claim wouldn't have legs and they'd turn it off and say, no, you don't qualify, you're earning too much, but I have the right to file. Now, with everything going on, you absolutely need to contact every employee, particularly if they're working for you right now, and say, hey, we received a unemployment claim for you, and there's a lot of fraud claims going around now. We just, if you filed it, that's fine. We'll respond appropriately. But if you didn't, we wanted you to be aware of this. And then, you can actually send them a copy of the initial claim that you got so they can start on the process that they need to do. Those claims also need to be responded to. The ones that are people that are working for you, just respond as fully employed, working all hours, -fraud. Or if the person never worked for you, in the day, people would say, oh, that's a mistake, I'm not going to mess with it. No, you send it back and you write, never an employee -fraud on that. Next slide. Employers, what you need to do is review each claim. Again, address the individuals that are impacted. You have to follow the state agency rules for reporting the fraud. And what we'll do at the end, I'll get information to Amy so that she can pass it to all the attendees on the things that need to be done for Maryland, New Jersey, and PA. And if you're getting wage audits, which they're a pain in the backside because it's, a form with a bazillion boxes asking for wages on a person that need to be filled in, they need to be responded to. In the past, a lot of times employers would just toss them and not fill them out. But, you can't toss a wage audit form and then, 3 months, 4 months down the road when you're getting charged for something you shouldn't get charged or getting overcharged. You can't say, well, I'm going to contest this. Well, why didn't you tell us? We can't fix it if we don't know it. And you need to audit your benefit charge statements. That is going to be paramount. Employees, they need to contact the state agency. You cannot, as an employer, file on the employee fraud line for an employee. The employee has to do it themselves. And the PA information 800 number for claimants to call. I want to warn you right now, that number has been, there's no person manning it anymore. And it says, do not leave a message here. It will take several months to get back to you if you do. They can only report online. They have to contact the 3 major credit bureaus and freeze their credit. We've had situations where people have taken out, these fraudsters have taken out credit cards in loans, bank loans in people's names. And for a CFO of one of the corporations that we work for in York, they took out a PPP loan in his name. So this is serious stuff. They need to notify the bank. And the most important part, believe it or not, is to notify law enforcement. And people first started in the beginning talking to the state police. Well, now then the state police, after a couple of weeks, said, we can't deal with this. You got to call your local police. So we were always saying, call your local police, and they'll take it over the phone. You don't have to go in person. Well, apparently now the local police are getting, each branch is getting, a couple hundred of these a week. So now what they're saying to people is you need to come in and file a report. So unfortunately, it's a large aggravation, but it needs to be done because if a fraudulent claim was filed in somebody's name and they knew about it, that's identity theft. It's not fraud. It's basically identity theft. And if they get a 1099-G at the end of the year and they can't produce a police report information, then the IRS is going to say, so sad, too bad, you owe us the money. So again, the police report is very important. Next slide. The scammers did, in 2020, they did find that, 36 billion had been taken away from actual claimants and stolen. So that's, a big problem. And the problem with PA is what, how to say it? They always want to cater to the lowest common denominator, meaning a lot of the folks that are out of work are not computer literate or don't have easy access to a computer, so on and so on. And if anybody's talked to anybody trying to file one of these things via a cell phone, that's darn near impossible sometimes. So they tried to make it easy so that even folks that are not very computer literate can do it. But by doing that, they inadvertently shot themselves in the foot because they also made it easier for the crooks to get into. Next slide. This is interesting. On 6/21, state of Maryland said they had 1.3 million fraudulent claims filed since the beginning of the pandemic. And what's mind-boggling is 508,000 of those claims were filed in May and June of this year. And New Jersey, 260,000, and they stopped $2 billion in fraudulent payments. Now, this is the sad part probably. PA, now this is interesting, reported 31,317 for the week ending 5/29. For the week ending 7/10/21, 71,695. Well, that doesn't sound real bad. Okay. But bottom line, if you take 71,695 and multiply it by 13, which is 1/4, that's 932,000, almost a million claims in a quarter. And the problem is unemployment is going down. It's under 5%, not up. So these, and I can tell you from my own experience at corporate cost control, I can say with absolute, knowledge that 95% of the claims that we're seeing in PA are fraud. I feel very, very sorry for anyone who gets laid off now, or someone who had a fraudulent claim filed against them that, everybody reported appropriately. Then 2 months down the road, they get laid off, because good luck with that. That's going to be a huge problem. And so that in PA, this is like a snowball rolling downhill. It's just bad, bad, bad. And we had on Friday, we have 5 different mailrooms across the country. 11 flats of Pennsylvania mail. And they also send them electronically. Some of them, some not. So normally we'd whip them open and load them into our system. Well, the poor mailroom people, number one, had to check that the stuff was timely, because a lot of it was coming late. And number two, then they had to open it and verify that whether or not we already had it in our system, because we don't want to be saying to the employer, sending them the same thing twice. So, it's just an absolute mess. You say, well, why is everybody after PA? I mean, the fraudsters, because New Jersey and Maryland both instituted multi-factor authentication. Maryland uses LexisNexis, and New Jersey uses ID.me. Part of the reason Pennsylvania decided to go away from that in the beginning was because the PUA claims, which were the federal ones, used ID.me all the time. And the problem that they noticed that a lot of their PA folks, even though they were entitled to PUA benefits, were not able to properly register for them because of a lack of skills or whatever. And so that's why they chose not to go that direction, and now they're paying the price. On these multi-factor authentication claim filings, they want a person to upload a copy of their driver's license with a photo on it, or their state ID, or a passport, or a green card, or whatever. And they also could do, it can be done via the computer, phone, or they even do live video conference sessions. So, in Maryland and New Jersey, a lot of these fraud claims, when they get we've received your information, now this is what we need, they bag it, they stop, and they go to another state. So and PA does, they're working on it, on incorporating a virtual identity verification process, but they have no date at this point. So, it's kind of pie in the sky. Again, like I said, why they replaced the 40-year-old system, and the new one's the one that's letting the claims through? And the reason is the old system, although it was a dinosaur, it required a lot of manual work on the back end. So people at the state of PA had to handle and look at the claims, and a lot of them got stopped that way. The new system bypasses humans altogether. So what the state said to us on one of our conference calls, which we're kind of looking at each other going, they didn't just say that, did they? They said, well, the old system, because they tried to tell us there were no more fraudulent claims than there were before. And, in our head, we're going baloney. And they're going, well, the old system would stop them at stage 1. The new system lets them get to stage 2. Which we're going, well, that doesn't sound like much of, progress. And what happens is PA has a single sign-on system the Keystone ID. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with it, and the frustrations that go along with it. But if you have a Keystone ID, works across all the PA systems. So it's not just unemployment that's getting nailed, it's food stamps, welfare, the children tax credits in PA, everything. They're getting just inundated. And also, what people are doing, and the people from the state are calling me going, you're not going to believe this. This fraudulent claim you reported? Well, we went in and we fixed it. And then I checked on it just to make sure it took in the system, and the fraudster went back in and changed it back. So it's a constant battle. And what they're doing is they're not mailing hardly any live checks. And, a normal person, a regular claimant, a lot of them are going to say, hey, deposit it directly to my checking account. Well, now the new rage is to put it on a debit card. So, if fraudsters were having it deposited to a checking account, then the police could track it. They're having it put on a debit card, mailed to some strange address, and that's what they're doing. We had an unemployment hearing recently where a poor lady in PA back $17,000 in unemployment benefits, and she had appealed it, and the employer was so distraught over it, they actually had us help the claimant, which normally we don't work on that side of the aisle. And the poor lady's in the hearing going, this money was mailed to Miami, Florida. I've never been to Miami in my life. And Jeff Miller, the gentleman from our company that worked on this case, he actually did that Google Earth search and searched that address. And, he sent pictures to the referee showing this address was one step above a shack. However, it had a brand new Land Rover and a brand new Mercedes coupe parked out front. So, bottom line, someone's making some big bucks on this. Next slide.
Hey, Judy, before we go to the next slide,
sure.
A couple of things. So I'm getting a lot of people commenting in about the fraud that they're experiencing in their workplaces, the fraudulent claims they're getting. So it's definitely out there.
Mm-hmm.
But a couple of questions. One is some folks are hearing for the first time that you should freeze credit, that you should file a police report. So if this is something that happened to somebody a couple of months ago, does it still make sense to go and try and do those things now?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because that wouldn't preclude that. The fact that they had a fraudulent claim filed means that, somebody has their information for sure. And where you really need to be really serious, super serious, is if you've got a social match. If the social matches, oh yeah. And that, by reporting, you're still protecting yourself. In the case of a 1099-G, or, with the credit agencies, by the way, people are weirded out about freezing your credit. Well, what does that mean? What that means is that you can, use your credit cards, life as usual. However, if you were to go and want to buy a new car, rent an apartment, buy a house, what you do is you unfreeze the credit, and it's, a real quick phone call either way. You may be able to even do it online. I'm not sure, but phone call for sure. 3 phone calls, you unfreeze it, then you do your transaction, then you lock it down again. But that way, no one can take out a loan, a credit card, nothing in your name without your knowledge.
Yeah. So what if somebody asked this question? What if you do everything right? You freeze your credit, you let the police know, the employer reports to the state that it's fraud, but the checks are still going. Is there anything you can do then?
Yeah. Well, they need to bring that. How do they know that?
I'm not sure. That was a question that came through. I guess it's showing up on the employer's side.
On the benefit charge statement.
Yeah.
The employer, that's the only way it could be, unless unless the claimant's getting checks in the mail. Some people, there are some stupid crooks out there that are actually having the money sent via check to the person they scammed. I don't know if they think they're going to get to the mailbox first or what. And so, I mean, if you're getting live checks, I can also send, instructions on what to do if you get money either deposited or a debit card that you shouldn't get, where to return it. And if you do have money that you you shouldn't get, the last thing you want to do is cash that check or use that money, number one. And number two, when you send it back, you absolutely need to photocopy everything and send it back certified mail. I do not trust. Can you imagine if you sent it back and you didn't photocopy it and you didn't track it? And then they go, oh, well, we never got it. Well, now you're on the hook for that money.
Yeah, I'm surprised at the number of people who also are willing to just sort of nonchalantly keep money that was never intended to them. It happens when their employer overpays them. It happens when the state sends them money. So yeah, great advice.
Yeah.
Send the money back.
There are some folks that from time to time, are always going to, make the wrong choice when they come to that proverbial fork in the road. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, all right. So are we good for the next slide?
Yep.
Okay. What do you have how the fraudsters get their information? Yes?
No, I've got MFA for New Jersey, Maryland, and federal PUA.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Again, this is all about the multi-factor authentication that I went through. New Jersey and Maryland are stopping a lot of them up front right now, and PA's still not doing it. So that's a problem, and hopefully it'll get fixed relatively soon. Again, the audit and tracking is going to be just totally serious that it needs to be done. So next slide. What do you have there? How did they get their information?
No, this one says, what about PA?
Okay, sorry. I have two of them that I moved. Okay. Again, the PA system is absolutely, broken, and they did replace the other one, but it's a problem. And the claims, most of the folks are opting for the debit cards. So again, if your folks get a debit card in the mail, they need to, treat that like a hot potato and take care of it. And again, they're working on the multi-factor authentication, but again, not done yet. So we can keep the MEA folks posted on when that does get put through, but everybody's going to have to be way more vigilant than you've been in the past, because the other thing that's going to happen, I'm going to tell you right now, unemployment rates, if you're a merit-rated employer, your rate went down most likely for 2021 because of the CARES Act, they had just blanket relief from charges. I mean, I work for some construction companies that normally run $200,000, $300,000 in legitimate benefits, who had very little disruption in their business in 2020, who run very high tax rates, who had their slate wiped clean for 2020 because of the CARES Act. So come 2021, they got their tax rate and they're thinking, holy cow, that's really good. And the last half of 20 got wiped, which is half of 22, the rating period, because the state rate's on a fiscal year, July 1 through June 30th. In fact, as of June 30th, just 20 days ago, the 2022 tax rate was a done deal. And what we're working on today is 2023, believe it or not. And what you're going to find is tax rates are going to spike. 2022 is going to be still fairly okay, but the Pennsylvania system is broke, worse than broke. In fact, this is kind of ironic. Pennsylvania, all this federal money coming in, it's not free money. It's a loan. And that's why there's already 25 states that have turned off the additional $300 a week that goes till September the 6th. Pennsylvania is not one of them. They still have it in effect until September 6th. But that's money that you have to pay back. And the last downturn, we all remember, was 2009. Well, guess what? In February of 2021, Pennsylvania made their final payment to the federal government to pay off the loan from 2009. They're just the month before COVID hit in March. So I dare say our kids and grandkids are going to be paying out of this hole. It's going to be bad. And Pennsylvania has provisions. In fact, they all do. Maryland, Jersey, they all have different sliding tax scales. They're allowed, if they're paying interest on a loan, they divvy it between all their employer accounts. So you could have a earned tax rate of a 2.6, but then till they go and put the add-ons, adjustment, interest factor, this, that, the other, additional tax, they can call it, other stuff, you could end up paying a 4 or 5%. So very high tax rates, probably from 22 to 26 are going to be, it's going to be serious. So again, plan for that. People are going to go, oh my gosh, how'd my tax rate get so high? We've been back in business as usual. No, it's because of everything, the fallout from what transpired now. As far as how the fraudsters get their information, are we there yet? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Now they're actually pretty devious. Obviously, the 2 large data breaches, which I mentioned before, and claimants are being tricked. They're being, through phishing attempts over email, phone, social media, sharing username and password. And this is the other one, the third one that I find very distressing. Fake, in PA, you can't file in person. You can only file online, and phone is worthless, like I said. So you've got to file online. Well, you go online, and I know you guys know because, you've probably tried to do other stuff, and it's shocking how many websites, when you do a search, look alike. And you really have to look at the URL and see, is this, pa.gov, or is it some outside organization? And, so a lot of people are filing unemployment claims on sites that aren't PA, they're crooks, or they're so frustrated with the system that they're, quote unquote, hiring outside companies and paying them a fee to get them unemployment benefits. Well, the one problem with that is it's illegal for anybody to file a claim for a person other than the person themselves. Okay. And clearly these are all there. So no legitimate company is going to offer for even whatever fee. So they get the money that way. And they also have the info to file a claim and steal money that way too. So that's, to me, very distressing. Next slide. How long is it going to be until this is resolved? Well, I wish I could tell you. Instead of being an HR person assisting our clients with unemployment issues and, broader issues, I have been an unemployment cop for the last several months. That's all I'm doing. My email's blowing up every day. By 9:30, I probably have 40 or 50 claims in there from clients. Or, it's kind of interesting when doctors get hacked, they have their secretaries contact me. So it's been an interesting, and talking to the folks at the state, I have long-term, contacts that are saying, this better, turn around soon. Otherwise, I'm retiring. That's what they're saying. And I had a client on Friday where between the 1st and the 12th of July, I turned in 129 fraudulent claims. A friend of mine at the state who's in the adjudication said he would, if I could send him a spreadsheet, he'd turn them all off. And was kind of interesting because out of the 129 claims, he said, called me back and said, well, we got one that's suspicious. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I don't think it's fraud. It's somebody who worked 2 jobs and was reporting wages from one but not the other. And in the quote unquote pre-COVID days, probably 1 out of every 100 would be someone who's filing unemployment and deliberately giving misinformation, to get a benefit that they're not entitled to. But I was going to say, to be on the safe side nowadays, I would just assume that, like I said, this employer probably all told had a couple hundred. So we only found one ringer, if you want to say, out of all the fraud ones. So I think it's just easier to report them as fraud. And actually it is fraud, just a different kind, and let the state sort it out. So do you have any other questions? Or, like I said, I will get how to return money, how to freeze your credit, and the instructions for the 3 states on what to do if you have a fraudulent claim filed, against a person that works for you.
Judy, those were the bulk of them. So we're going to gather that information and we'll be able to send it out to people who attended today.
Right.
Okay.
And
awesome.
I appreciate your time, everybody, and my inability to get in, but hopefully it was still worth your time.
Yeah, no,
Thank you very
Judy.
much.
That was awesome.
Okay.
For anybody out there who thinks they could benefit from Judy's services, her contact information will be in the email that we send out today. Thank you guys so much for your patience with our technical issues. And Judy, thank you so much. It's always an education whenever we hear from you. All right.
Also remind everybody we have a September, seminar coming up for an hour and a half on unemployment.
Yeah,
so that's going to be good.
We've got something coming up. We'll get that information.
Yeah, at that point, I will have much more information. The state either is going to have, we'll know exactly where we're going with everything at that point. But right now, the states are just gobsmacked with everything coming in and, don't have everything done. So
Great. Thank you, Judy. Yeah, right. we'll get that date out for everybody as well, so they can make sure to put that on their calendars. But everybody have a great week. Thank you so much for attending.